Today we're taking a look at the very first set of rules for the Deathwatch. This is Chapter Approved 2003 with the rules for the first Deathwatch. Spiky bits.
Make sure you stay in the trenches by becoming a supporter over on Patreon and also scoring yourself some free miniature swag in the process. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out our site, spikybits.com, for all the hot hobby tutorials, news, rumors on all your favorite hobby topics. And head on over to thelongwar.net. That's the home of the battle reports for exclusive content, early access videos, and more. Become a veteran of the Long War today.
Alright, welcome back, Hobby Maniacs. Now, everybody seems to have Deathwatch fever as of late, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to go jump into the cat tub time machine and jump back to 2002. Actually, I think it was somewhere between 2001 and 2002, actually, when these rules came out. This was a one-page little kind of insert in the White Dwarf, which they used to do back in the day. They would give us all sorts of cool stuff in the White Dwarf. And actually, all of the material in this book came out, was basically, I guess, compiled from 1 year's worth of White Dwarf issues. Well, it might have been a little bit more than that. It might have been like 15 months because they put out the first chapter approved in 2001. So then they came back and they added a bunch more stuff in here to the second one, including Baby Bajorn's rules for playing him in games of Warhammer 40k 3rd edition as well. But jumping back to the topic at hand, of course, the Deathwatch. These guys are amazing. They're the Emperor's All-Stars. I was inspired by these guys when they first came out. I was like, man, I want a Deathwatch army. It'd be so fresh, have all the different, chapters showing them off. I thought it was so cool. But I ended up settling on a Black Templars. That was my first loyal army. I guess really my first army altogether, actually in, the conventional sense of the word army. And then second edition, I ran a bunch of little chaos stuff, but it wasn't really a whole army. Things were way different in second edition than they are today, or even third edition up to today. So these guys were fresh. I liked the black armor. Ended up doing Templars, when the whole Armageddon thing came out. But you could always have a squad of these guys in your list, which they basically counted as HQ choice. So here was the points, or here was the rules for basically using them. But you could also upgrade any of your characters. Headquarters, veteran, or tactical squads could be upgraded for 5 points a dude as well. So that was kind of cool. And then you could take the actual kill team itself. This was, the rules, because basically a Space Marine then became 20 points, or a veteran became 30, or a captain became 50, which is, kind of a steal for the points they are these days. And then they had all the special rules, all the special ammunition, which, if you notice here, this is what they could get. They could get the M40 targeter with auto sense link and Stalker silent shells, which of course, turned into the Stalker bolt gun, which Telion had, I guess, in about, when did he come out? Like 2005, right? With the 5th edition. I want to say it was with the 5th edition. No, it was still 4th edition in 2005. So, yeah, okay. So that was the new Space Marine book in 2005, where we started getting some new plastics for those guys. But basically, it just goes into a little bit of the fluff breakdown, which is a lot of what we know today. On Tesla Prime and the Ultramar section, because they were basically to fight the Tyranids, right? So a lot of this is, it's written by Andy Chambers and Pete Haynes. They limited it to Ultramarine, Size of the Emperor, and Lamenters chapter for service against Tyranids. Of course, Lamenters are Blood Angels' successor down the road. And then there was 2 ways that you could field them in 40k. The first is an entire team of Deathwatch Space Marines. Up to 1 kill team could be included as HQ choice, which they display right here. Or you could upgrade your dudes, like I said, right here, for 5 points each. It was for any Space Marine army, any Imperial Guard army, including Catachan, Steel Legion, or any Sisters of Battle army. So that was kind of like the first, vestiges of Codex Imperial, so to speak. Now, of course, we know with the Allies rule what all that's about. So they got access to Metal Storm ammunition, Inferno bolts, Kraken bolts, and then, of course, just the normal bolter, bolt pistol that they could have. Of course, they could use it with the combi weapons as well, because it says basically they got the ammunition if they were in Deathwatch. Once you're in, it's no takesy backsies. They get all the cool stuff. Now, if you look at the profiles over here, you're going to notice that there's not any low AP shells, because basically they came back and they replaced the Metal Storm, I think, with the Vengeance round, which is like low AP anti-armor kind of type deal. Because if you had given that to people in 3rd edition, having a bunch of AP2 running around was kind of like the equivalent to Strength 10 and or AP2 was the equivalent to D weapons back in the day there, right? And so you give that out to people all willy-nilly, you start breaking things. And of course they didn't here. The lowest they had was AP4, but they could have longer range, which you still see today with the Kraken Bolt, the Inferno Bolt, Strength 4, 24-inch Strength 4 AP5. The benefit to that was it basically functioned as a Storm Bolter because they had True Grit. And True Grit says that basically you didn't get your +1 attack for charging, but you still counted as having a bolt pistol close combat weapon once you got to actual combat. Interesting side note, Space Wolves as well as Iron Hands used to have that rule as well back in 3rd, 4th edition time. You could also take a Rhino, and every member of the Deathwatch, if you didn't, could Deep Strike. So that's kind of still some stuff we see today, but a lot of this, remember too, got turned into the Sternguard rules. So they took away Deathwatch for a while. They weren't in 5th edition, they weren't in 6th edition. And it was basically, you could feel the kind of Sternwatch in as them, basically, and now they're back. So we have, 3 editions worth of rules, if you count, the Sternguard incarnation of them, to kind of build from. So it's really cool to see, to go back and look. I never realized until I cracked the book open. Of course I read this, but it's been 15 years? I couldn't even, I remember all these pictures and everything, but I didn't remember that. Like Stalker Bolt Gun, like that's where it started right there. That's really cool to see that they, I'm sure they have some like crazy vault in Nottingham, like, oh, all right, let's go pull this, this book from back in the day and see, because you got the new people design and stuff, so they're probably, I don't remember that, so let me go pull the book and see what's up. So that would be really crazy to see the Citadel archive, so to speak, all the books and supplements going back to the 80s and all the crazy stuff we don't even know about, right? So if you take a look at their profiles, of course 3rd edition was more standardized to what we know today from 2nd edition. So pretty much the standard everything here, a standard stat line for Space Marine. Of course the captains weren't quite as badass as they are today, unfortunately there. And then you could see where 2 of the Space Marines could be upgraded with a special weapon. Of course they didn't have the frag cannon because they hadn't stolen it from the Blood Angels at that point. But they did have the heavy bolter. Well, they had a special heavy bolter, of course. They could also get the Hellfire round, which we see today. Pretty much the same, it looks like. Yep, small blast. And then the heavy bolter here was only 18-inch range, but it was assault 3. So not quite what we see in today, but still pretty good for back in the day. Heavy bolters were a thing to be feared. I still have an Iron Warriors Devastator squad with 4 heavy bolters in it. You might call me crazy, but that did some work back in the day. This Metal Storm ammunition was Strength 3, Assault 2. So of course, they took away Inferno Bolts. They basically added Vengeance. And I think this is Frag. They just straight call it Frag ammunition now, I believe. I have to grab my Deathwatch book. I thought I had it all memorized, but I don't. You got me. You got me good. Got me unprepared. But anyways, so this was really cool to see how you could feel the Deathwatch back in the day. And of course, remember, now we're seeing the White Dwarf coming out, right? The brand new monthly White Dwarf, and it's 162 pages, and they updated a whole bunch of games in it as well. And I'm sure going forward we'll see additional rules and things to keep up with. But it's really cool to see when you start thinking about it, like all the content that came out between these 2 books here that used to be collected. Now there was Chapter Approved 2003, and maybe we'll get to doing some more stuff out of this book, some more features and things like we've done too on that chapter, the very first chapter proof. Well, I guess it's not technically the first one. The first book of the Astronomicon came out in like 89 or 90 or something like that, but then they switched it over to this. So it would be really cool to go back and do some of these features, I feel like, because you've got stuff in here like City Fight, the Emperor's Champion got his own rules. You were able to field him, and then of course he wasn't available to all command squads until the 2005 Space Marine Codex came out. But I mean, there's all sorts of neat stuff in all of these books, and each one really should have its own time in the sun, because there's so much cool stuff, like a whole army of Kroot right here. You could also feel Kroot mercenaries, different variations of the Imperial Guard. Here was the Last Chancers, or the Gaunt's Ghosts rather. So all of those guys, I used to sell a box set of these, like Sniper Mad Larkin. Remember that dude? He's pretty pimp. And then they had, well, I'm sure I think they made a custom model of Rag. I remember he wasn't one that you could buy in the box set. I guess he's not in here. These were all the characters available in the box set. And then you've got, what is this, the Speed Freaks army? It looks like it's the Speed Freaks army for orcs. Oh, the Feral Orcs army, where you can field Squigos. That was, they started putting that stuff out. So basically you can field, little baby Squigos on the table and use them as a transport. There it is, the Squigoth right there. So you could have the standard, big, or massive. That was kind of crazy. And you can take Luda batteries, playing the Tanith first and only, which we just covered right there. So there's a lot of cool stuff in here that all deserves its time in the sun. And of course, it all has because trial and assault rules are in here, kind of which led to the assault rules that we know today. Whether or not they change them next edition, don't know yet. But there's some really good stuff in here thus far, as far as that goes, and everything's color coded and tabbed. It's a really cool series of 3 books. If you can find them on eBay, pick them up, because they are, they don't go for a whole lot, but it's definitely something that if you're into the nostalgia and you're into the retro flashbacks, it's definitely worth seeing. And then you can find these little hidden gems like Stalker bolt guns and all sorts of things that are in here that things that have come up today, and you just never know what they might come out with tomorrow. We might get a new plastic gray coat Imperial Guardsman. They got scions. Who knows? You just don't know. And it's cool to go back and read through all these and kind of see the way things used to work and start to get some ideas. Oh, and this was really cool too. I don't know if you saw this, but basically when they would go back and update a book, whether it was a RATA or an FAQ, they would literally print out these little things and you could cut them out and glue them into your book. So basically cover up the old stuff, so you can basically make your new printing. And that was really neat because like Chaplain Xavier, a lot of stuff out of Codex Armageddon was in here. And oh man, it was just such a good time. They did such a good job. They put the FAQs in here, Space Wolf Q&A, just all sorts of good stuff in here. And it's really cool to read these and then fast forward to 15 years to now, or whatever you want to call it, 13, 15. And just see Games Workshop making all the same moves that were really part of the hobby and what made the hobby so great back in the day. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed our retro flashback look at the very first set of Deathwatch rules from Chapter Approved 2003.
Deleted scenes, bonus content, and all the interviews and post-game wrap-up videos can be located in the Hall of Veterans on thelongwar.net. Visit thelongwar.net today and try a week completely free with no strings attached. That's not all. TheLongWar.net is also your hobby resource for exclusive early access with an ad-free experience to all your favorite videos. Members of the Hall of Veterans gain early exclusive access to multiple hobby videos.